those indicators underneath CQI is looking at team data, looking at analyzing AKS, developing common assessments, developing common lessons, looking at student work, and modifying practice. All right, so all of those indicators, like for me, CQI is most definitely where the work is. Like that's where we look at now and we say, what is this meeting supposed to be about, right? And it's about those things. It's about instruction, assessment, and standards, right? Like that's what we're talking about. What are your thoughts there?
I think sometimes the chance to like analyze the things for CQI or look at work, it's not always something that we get to do.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've split up in our team. We've split up some of our our CQI time and our kids, so they go to different classes, and it's. I mean, I think we look at it as like your group of your kids that come to your room, but we don't necessarily all talk about those things together.
Well, and I think that like the separation of like levels, like student levels, has something to do with that too, because we'll share student work with the gifted students and kind of compare like how we're grading things or like looking at that. But we couldn't really do that with the whole group all the time because not everybody has gifted students, and so that's not a fair comparison. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts? And this is most definitely a year where we have class makeup that's different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there benefit to a class that has a large ML population seeing student work from a class of students that are receiving served in the gifted program? Like, could that student work be beneficial for the whole team to see or to analyze?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it would even be beneficial for some of the students to see, like, this is where you could get,
Right.
as you're growing with your English and, or you're able to understand more, like, this is kind of gives them that goal.
Yeah.
Because they used to have it right there with them in the classroom, and now with the way we're, grouped differently, they kind of don't have those student models. So seeing the work is I think it could give them something to work towards.
Yeah. I think so as well.
I also think on the other side of that, it's also good for students to see, especially ML students, to see work that looks similar to theirs of that, yes, we can, I totally agree, you can have them shoot higher, but also I think from someone who's lived in a different country, you're constantly just checking around you, did I do this correctly? Did I do this right? And being able to have the affirmation of okay, I am doing something that looks similar to somebody else, and that makes me feel like I'm accomplished in what I'm doing because I don't feel alone in that. And so I think the grouping of them together has been really beneficial in my opinion, just because they can be all at the same level and it's not a one-off situation of oh well you just do this or you do this a little differently, and that I feel brings them in and gives them more confidence to be in conversations, be a part of the academic learning when they feel that they have a place.
Yeah, no, I can understand that, and I think there are times when, by us each bringing a piece, if each one of you brought a work sample of an assessment that you brought, like one of the EL tasks that
Yeah.
when you look down and you said, okay, let's take a look at this together and see where we're at. Number one, I think we are going to find, regardless of student makeup, some common misconceptions, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we just have those, and honestly, you guys can probably look ahead of the next module right now and tell me what the common misconceptions are going to be. But I think that student work sometimes affirms that. And it is good, I think, to be able to look at that and identify those, and then that kind of targets your instruction a little bit better.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think it's because I think you're both right. I think it's
Yeah.
important for students to have exemplar examples, to be able to know what the that sets expectations, that so that they know exactly where we're trying to get them to go to, right? And then the other thing would be to see, that affirmation of, oh, I am doing this right. I am on the right track. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me and having having this conversation, and I know you've done a lot of work with your third grade team, in particular, just through your collaborative practices and how you guys get together and collaborate and talk about instruction and talk about ways to support student interventions. And I know that we've done a lot of work at our school around providing those tiered interventions for students, but also just high quality tier 1 instruction in the classroom. So I think I'd like to just ask first, like, how do you feel like things are going in your CLT meetings maybe now as opposed to maybe this time last year?
I definitely think we are making gains in a lot of areas. We have gone from teachers really planning in isolation, or maybe small group teams planning and getting together and just discussing teacher actions. And now I feel like our discussions are more collaborative. We have really taken the focus from the teaching to the learning, where we are really focusing on those student outcomes. And I feel like that has been really the work that we have done over the last couple of years.
Oh, I love that. I love the focus from teaching to learning, because I would agree with you. I think we've really done a lot more like diving into like how do we provide that instruction and what are those student actions coming
Right.
out of. So I think that's been really, really beneficial. What are some of the things that you think helped to move this work forward the most?
I think that really just making a structure for our CLT, letting our staff know our expectations, having that mission and that vision of what it should look like, and then really just having coaches come in and facilitate that work and help us kind of get that ball rolling. I feel like just having that common language and the common vision has really helped us get to that point.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree completely. And that vision and mission that you speak of, that CLT vision that was created last year, you helped to create that.
We did.
Most definitely. So I think that's been very helpful for teachers as we move forward. Do you feel like you, from talking to colleagues throughout the building, has this been something that you feel like what is your sense of, like maybe if you, or I mean, if you have some, they may not have shared, but do you have a sense of other grade levels, and if this is something that's kind of expanding or kind of going the same way in other grade levels?
Well, last year I would have meetings with my assistant principal and the other grade levels that she supported, and so we had a lot of conversations about what CLTs looked like in the other grades. So I feel like we were starting that process last year, and that it was spreading to other grade levels as well. This year I haven't really had a lot of those conversations, but I'm hoping to in the future.
Yeah, I think that would be potentially one of our next steps. I think this year is kind of establishing a little bit more of that vertical alignment.
I agree.
Yeah. Are there other kind of next steps that you think we should potentially take?
I still think that focusing on psychological safety is something that we need to work on. I feel like we are making gains in that, but I feel like our upcoming staff development on and related to that topic will kind of help people be more aware. So maybe we can make some gains in that area, where then we can just do a little more work with our teams, because we feel like we are there for the same purpose and everybody is in a safe environment to share.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. And again, working and partnering with you on developing that's been really, really good for me also. And because I do think there's a piece like that exists for our staff where maybe they don't always feel comfortable, not necessarily comfortable in a way that's like they don't feel like they're going to be like insulted or anything along those lines, but I think just safe to push, safe to argue in a positive kind of way.
And this work is still new.
Yeah.
And you think about adult learning theory, like we are not new, far enough in this work where we people are still testing it out.
Yeah.
And in those early stages of change, there's going to be that resistance, because there is, people aren't sure, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Am I going to be overanalyzed for the work that I'm doing? So I feel like some of it is, just change is hard, but also people, worrying that, they might be over scrutinized of, you know, the work they're doing.
Yeah,
'Cause it's
absolutely.
easy to get into a comfortable place, and when we're asking people to think about things a little bit differently, sometimes that's a little, you know, challenging.
Yeah.
So,
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And I think, for me, because I think what you pointed out was so important, that it's like, this is still very new for us. And really, we're only going into like year two, really, of this kind of work.
Right.
Like, it's still very, very new. And there are times when I find myself wanting to push faster and harder.
right,
And then I almost have to say, like, you know, the saying, you gotta move slow to move fast.
Right.
And sometimes it is about taking those appropriate steps and celebrating the work that we've done along the lines. I don't know, do you feel like as a school we are moving too fast or too slow with this? Or how much do you think your colleagues could be pushed, I guess would be a good question.
I feel like we are comfortable enough where we are, where, you know, just continuing to look at those CLT evaluations,
Mhm.
really feel like that's next steps to like
Yeah.
continue to identify. So I feel like the pace is going fine, but I think if CLTs continue to look at those areas for growth, then they can make their own individual goals and go from there. So I feel like school-wide, we're on the right track, but
Okay.
I think at this point, we put it back on the individual teams
Yeah.
to kind of look at their data to see where their growth areas are, and really, because everybody is in a different place
Yeah.
with the ability and the willingness to be pushed
Yeah.
and the readiness to be pushed.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think you're absolutely, okay, so I will also say, I think I need to hear that. Like, I think, it's important for me to hear, like, okay, we're headed in the right direction.
we
We're
are.
going at a good speed.
Yeah.
And it's gonna depend on the individuals at this point in time
Right.
to how fast we push them, as opposed to like one grade level versus the other.
right, and I think it can change year to year too. Like if we have a grade level with a lot of turnover and we get a new
100%.
team, then we might be back to square one. But as long as
100%.
we have the foundation and we continue to, you know, coach the sit leaders and
Yeah.
kind of work in that direction and, you know, continue to facilitate that growth within our CLTs, I think that we can continue to move the work forward.
I think you're absolutely correct. Okay, can I also ask you, if you ever feel like I'm pushing too much or I'm pushing not enough, or, would you be willing to come and tell me, hey, knock it off?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I think that's important for me to
Right.
also have, especially that perception and that perspective of the teacher and the
Right.
classroom and the teams.
You know, going forward, I think that, you know, when we have initiatives that we have, just making sure there's that follow through,
Mhm.
you know, like going to visit classroom visits
Yeah.
and things like that. So just, I think that we will get a lot more buy-in from the staff if we continue to be present and, you know, if we say we're going to do something to make
Yeah.
sure we're following through with it, and, you
Yeah.
know, just things like data talks and
Yep.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So
I
I feel like
completely
going
agree.
forward, you
Yep.
know, just continuing to, you know, to make sure that we have that follow through.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, as well. And I think specifically we can talk further about the peer observations for this week that were supposed to be last week actually, and talking about how we make sure that those types of things, which are, I think it's important for us to prioritize what we want to get done in those CLTs, and then
Right.
we make sure that we follow through as
And
best we can.
That type of work is new, so it's
Yeah.
hard to find that time to fit those new things in as
Yeah.
well. So,
Yeah.
I think that we have the right ideas.
Yeah.
And I think going forward, you know, just getting all the pieces to line up, I think we can do it.
Yeah, so let me ask you about specifically, because I'm thinking now about that peer observation plan. Was that too much too soon?
No, I just feel like, we weren't really, like, my grade level didn't do it last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be honest,
Yeah.
because the time came and went, it wasn't, anything to be,
Well, and I
you know,
think,
it wasn't that we didn't want to do it, we
Yeah.
just completely forgot about it.
Yeah. and I think that those types of things, and so that was one of those things that was an inconsistent practice. And a lot of that falls back on me, right? So making sure that we have the appropriate infrastructure in place, that those foundations, those structures in place, so that when we have that peer observation plan, we say,
hey, this is who's gonna record, this is when we're gonna do it, and making sure that we're following all